Dr. Phil stopped mid-sentence. His hand trembled slightly as he held the white envelope. The cameras kept rolling, but everything in Studio 29 had frozen. The family on the beige couch sat paralyzed, mother with tears already streaming, daughter's eyes wide with fear, father staring at the floor as if willing himself to disappear. The audience, usually quick to react, held their breath. For the first time in over 2 decades of broadcasting, Dr. Phil McGraw looked at the cameras and said 2 words that changed everything. Stop rolling. The letter had been hidden for 11 years, and what it contained would shatter a family, rewrite their history, and force Dr. Phil to make a choice that went against every rule of television production. This is the story of the Henderson family, a secret that refused to stay buried, and the moment when a piece of paper became more powerful than anything anyone in that room had ever experienced. If you want to see how this unfolds and what Dr. Phil does next, subscribe now, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. 3 weeks before that envelope arrived at the Dr. Phil show, the Henderson family looked like they had it all together. Sarah Henderson, 42, was a beloved elementary school teacher in a small Texas town. Her husband, Mark, 45, ran a successful auto repair shop. Their daughter, Emma, 17, was a straight-A student with college scholarship offers piling up. To their neighbors, to their church community, to everyone who knew them, the Hendersons were the model American family. But Emma was breaking. For months, she'd been pulling away, sleeping through the day, skipping school, losing weight. Sarah chalked it up to senior year stress. Mark thought it was typical teenage rebellion. But Emma knew the truth. She was carrying a secret that was slowly destroying her from the inside out. It started with a box in the attic. Emma had been looking for old photo albums for a school project when she found it. A weathered shoebox pushed behind the insulation, covered in dust. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to her mother, all from the same person, Margaret Henderson, Mark's mother, Emma's grandmother. Margaret had died when Emma was 6. Emma remembered her as warm, funny, the kind of grandmother who baked cookies and told stories. But these letters told a different story. They were pleas, desperate, heartbroken pleas, written in shaky handwriting, dated from 11 years ago until just weeks before Margaret's death. Sarah, please let me see her. Please let me explain. I'm dying. I just want to hold my granddaughter one more time. Emma read every single letter that night, and with each one, her understanding of her family crumbled. Her parents had cut Margaret out of their lives completely. No visits, no calls, no explanations. And they told Emma that her grandmother was too sick to see her, that it was better this way. But Margaret hadn't been too sick. She'd been desperate, begging, and her parents had kept every letter locked away where no one would ever find them. Emma confronted her mother the next morning. Sarah went pale, then defensive. "You don't understand. You were just a child. We did what we had to do to protect you." But when Emma demanded to know from what, Sarah walked away. The conversation was over. That's when Emma wrote to the Dr. Phil show. Not her parents, not some family therapist, Dr. Phil. Because Emma had grown up watching the show with her grandmother during summer visits when she was little. Margaret loved Dr. Phil. She'd say, "That man tells the truth even when it hurts." Emma needed someone who would tell the truth, even if it destroyed everything. Dr. Phil's team moved fast. Within a week, they'd contacted the family, arranged travel, conducted pre-interviews. But there was something Sarah and Mark didn't know. Emma had kept one letter, the most devastating one, the last one Margaret ever wrote, and she'd mailed it directly to Dr. Phil's production office with a note. "Don't tell my parents about this. Read it on air. They need to hear it." The day of taping arrived. The Henderson family sat in the green room, tension crackling between them. Emma hadn't spoken to her parents in 3 days.
Sarah kept trying to smooth things over, to control the narrative. Mark sat silent, jaw clenched, arms crossed. They thought they were coming on the show to talk about Emma's rebellion. They had no idea what was about to happen. Dr. Phil walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. He greeted the audience, made his usual opening remarks, then brought out the Henderson family. Sarah smiled for the cameras, that practiced everything's fine smile. Mark nodded stiffly. Emma looked at Dr. Phil with eyes that said, "Please help us." The first 20 minutes followed standard format. Dr. Phil asked about Emma's behavior changes. Sarah explained how worried they were. Mark talked about how Emma used to be such a good kid. Emma sat silent, arms wrapped around herself, staring at her shoes. Then Dr. Phil shifted. "Emma, your parents think this is about typical teenage rebellion, but you wrote to us saying something very different. You said your parents have been lying to you your entire life. That's a serious accusation. What are you talking about?" Emma's voice cracked. "My grandmother, Margaret. They told me she was too sick to see me, that she didn't want visitors, but that's not true. She wanted to see me. She begged them, and they kept her away from me until she died." Sarah's face went from concerned mother to defensive in an instant. "Emma, you don't understand the full story. There were reasons." "What reasons?" Emma's voice rose. "What could possibly justify cutting off a dying woman from her granddaughter?" The audience murmured. This was getting uncomfortable. Dr. Phil held up his hand. "Hold on. Sarah, Mark, is this true? Did Margaret want to see Emma?" Mark spoke for the first time. "Yes, but nothing." Emma pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. "I found her letters, all of them, every single one, where she begged you to let me see me, where she said she was dying and just wanted to say goodbye." Subscribe and leave a comment because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Sarah's composure shattered. "You went through our private belongings. You had no right." "I had every right." Emma was crying now. "She was my grandmother, and you stole my chance to know her." Dr. Phil stood up.
The energy in the room had shifted completely. This wasn't a typical family dysfunction case anymore. This was something deeper, something that was about to explode. "Emma," Dr. Phil said carefully, "you mentioned letters, plural. How many are we talking about?" 43. Emma's voice was flat now, emotionally exhausted. 43 letters over 5 years, and they kept every single one hidden in the attic, like they were evidence of something. Dr. Phil turned to Sarah and Mark. "Why would you keep letters from someone you were trying to cut off? If you'd really made a clean break, why not destroy them?" Silence. Sarah looked at Mark. Mark looked at the floor. The audience was completely still. That's when Dr. Phil's producer walked onto the stage, a breach of protocol that made everyone tense. She whispered something to Dr. Phil and handed him a white envelope. Dr. Phil looked at it, then at Emma, then back at the envelope. His expression changed. Something in that envelope had shifted everything. "Emma," Dr. Phil said quietly, "did you send us something before you came here today?" Emma nodded. "The last letter. The one she wrote 2 weeks before she died. I thought if you read it, maybe they'd finally understand what they did." Dr. Phil looked at Sarah and Mark. "Did you know about this letter?" They shook their heads. Sarah's face had gone pale. "What letter? Emma, what did you do?" Dr. Phil sat down, holding the envelope like it was made of glass. "This letter was sent to our production team with specific instructions. Emma wanted it read on air. She wanted you to hear it in real time, the way she did when she found it." He paused. "I've read it, and I need you to understand what's in this letter changes everything we've been talking about. This isn't just about family conflict anymore." The audience was dead silent. Sarah's hands were shaking. Mark's face had gone from defensive to something else. Fear. Dr. Phil opened the envelope slowly. He pulled out 2 pieces of paper, handwritten in the shaky script of someone very ill. He looked at the family one more time. "Are you sure you want me to do this, here, on camera? Once I start reading, we can't take it back." Emma nodded firmly. "Read it. They need to hear it." Dr. Phil began. "My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and somehow, someday, the truth found its way to you. I pray you're old enough to understand. I pray you can forgive me for not fighting harder." Dr. Phil paused. The studio went completely silent. His expression had shifted from clinical psychologist to something more personal, more pained. He glanced at Sarah and Mark, then back at the letter. "I need to tell you why your parents took you away from me, not because they were cruel, not because they didn't love me, but because I made a choice 11 years ago that I thought was right, and it destroyed our family." Dr. Phil's voice was steady, but there was weight in every word now. The audience leaned forward. Sarah had started crying silently. Mark's jaw was clenched so tight it looked painful. "When you were 6 years old, something happened that I will regret for the rest of my life. Your parents asked me to watch you for the weekend while they went to a wedding out of state. I said yes. I loved having you. You were my light." Dr. Phil paused, turning the page. His hand was steady, but his eyes showed something the audience rarely saw: genuine emotional impact. "That Saturday afternoon, I went to answer the phone in the kitchen. You were playing in the living room. I was gone for 3 minutes, maybe 4. When I came back, you were standing on a chair, reaching for something on the bookshelf. The chair tipped. You fell. You hit your head on the corner of the coffee table." Emma's face had gone completely white. Sarah was sobbing now, her whole body shaking. Mark had his head in his hands. Dr. Phil continued. "There was so much blood. I panicked. I called 911. Then I called your parents. You were unconscious when the ambulance arrived. The doctor said you had a concussion, a fractured skull. They said if the impact had been half an inch different, you would have died." The audience gasped. Emma's hand went to the back of her head, where a small scar had always been, a scar her parents told her came from a playground accident when she was little. "You recovered fully, thank God. But your mother, my daughter-in-law, told me she could never trust me again, that I had been careless, that I had almost killed her child. Your father agreed. They said I couldn't be around you anymore, that it was too dangerous, that every time they'd look at me, they'd remember that day." Off camera, Dr. Phil made a choice no producer expected. He stopped reading and looked directly at Sarah and Mark. "Is this true? This is why you cut her off, because of an accident?" Mark finally spoke. His voice, "It wasn't just an accident. Emma almost died in Margaret's care. How are we supposed to—" His voice broke. "How are we supposed to trust her after that?" Sarah was barely coherent through her tears. "Every time I looked at my mother-in-law, all I could see was Emma on that hospital bed. The doctor said she might not wake up. Do you understand? My baby might not have woken up." Dr. Phil set the letter down. "I understand trauma. I understand fear. But Margaret wrote 43 letters over 5 years begging to see her granddaughter before she died. And you kept them all. Why?" Sarah looked broken. Because I couldn't throw them away. Because part of me knew we were wrong. But I was so angry, so scared." Dr. Phil picked up the letter again. "There's one more paragraph. Margaret's last words." He read slowly. "Emma, my sweet girl, forgive your parents. They acted out of love and fear. But please know this, I never stopped loving you. Not for 1 second. I died with your picture in my hand. You were my last thought. And if there's a heaven, I'm watching over you still. All my love, Grandma Margaret." The studio erupted, not with applause, with tears. The audience, the crew, even the cameramen were visibly affected. Emma sobbed into her mother's shoulder as Sarah held her for the first time in weeks.
Mark's face was buried in his hands, his shoulders shaking. But what happened next is something no one in the room or watching at home saw coming. Dr. Phil walked over and knelt in front of Emma. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small bracelet, silver, worn with a charm that read, "Emma's guardian angel." "This was with the letter," he said softly. "Your grandmother asked that if this letter ever found you, you'd receive this too. She wore it every day after the accident. She never stopped being your grandmother." Emma took the bracelet with shaking hands and clasped it around her wrist. The camera captured the moment raw, unscripted, achingly real. Dr. Phil stood and addressed the family. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm connecting you with a family therapist who specializes in grief and trauma. You're going to process this together. Sarah, Mark, you made a decision out of fear. It cost you your mother, and it cost Emma her grandmother. But it's not too late to honor Margaret's memory by healing as a family." He turned to the camera. "Sometimes the hardest truths are the ones we hide from ourselves. Margaret forgave them before she died. Now they have to forgive themselves. Share this story and subscribe. Make sure this message is never forgotten." 6 months later, the Dr. Phil Show received a letter from Emma. She was in college now, thriving. The bracelet never left her wrist. Her parents had visited Margaret's grave together for the first time since the funeral. They'd read all 43 letters aloud, one by one. Healing, Emma wrote, wasn't instant, but it was happening. Dr. Phil kept Margaret's original letter in his office, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that truth, no matter how painful, is always worth telling, that forgiveness is possible, and that sometimes the bravest thing a family can do is face the past they've been running from. The bracelet, the letter, and the Henderson family became one of the most impactful moments in Dr. Phil history, because it wasn't about ratings or drama, it was about a grandmother's love that refused to die, and a family that finally found their way back to each other.